The emergency room doors of St. Jude's Memorial slammed open with a violence that shook the glass panes, heralded by the rhythmic, heavy thud of tactical boots. It wasn't a standard ambulance arrival. Instead, 4 men in full military fatigue, their faces masked by a stoic, departmental coldness, marched in surrounding a gurney. At the head of the group was a man whose presence commanded the very air in the room. A general, his chest decorated with rows of service ribbons that caught the harsh fluorescent light. On the gurney lay a young soldier, his skin the color of ashen slate, his uniform torn and soaked in a dark, metallic-smelling crimson. I rushed forward, my hands already reaching for my stethoscope, but the general's gloved hand clamped down on my wrist with the strength of a vice grip. His eyes were like flint, devoid of the usual panic seen in a grieving relative. He didn't ask for help. He didn't scream for a doctor. He simply looked at the unmoving boy and then at me, his voice a low, vibrating growl that seemed to bypass my ears and rattle my ribcage. "He is gone," the general stated. Not as a medical observation, but as a final, unappealable command. He told me there was no need for monitors, no need for a code blue, and certainly no need for a record of this arrival. The air in the trauma bay turned frigid. My senior colleagues hesitated, intimidated by the stars on the man's shoulders and the armed guards flanking the entrance. But something felt fundamentally wrong. As a nurse, you are trained to look for life, but you also learn to sense when death is being enforced, rather than naturally occurring. The general's insistence was too sharp, too immediate. As I stood there, my wrist still throbbing from his grip, my eyes wandered down to the soldier's exposed left arm. There, just above the elbow, was a mark that stopped my breath. It wasn't a standard military tattoo. It was a perfect raised scar in the shape of a hollow circle, with a singular, vivid crimson dot tattooed precisely in the center, the ghost signal. It was a mark I had only heard of in hushed late-night whispers among veteran flight nurses, a symbol for those who do not exist on official manifests. As I leaned in, pretending to check a non-existent pulse, I saw the impossible. The red dot in the center of the circle wasn't just ink. It was a micro-thin biological sensor, and it was pulsing with a faint rhythmic amber light. The soldier wasn't dead. He was in a state of deep, chemically induced suspended animation, and the general was here to make sure he never woke up. Before I continue this incredible story, I would love to know, where are you watching us from? We truly love knowing how far these stories travel. If this story has already gripped you, take a moment to subscribe to the channel right now, because what comes next will surprise you even more. My name is Evelyn Reed, and before I found myself staring down a high-ranking military official in a city hospital, I was just a girl from a quiet coastal town in Maine. I grew up where the fog rolls in thick enough to hide the world, and perhaps that's why I've always been good at seeing what's hidden in the shadows. I spent my early career working in rural clinics where resources were scarce, but the gossip was plenty. I learned that people often lie, but their bodies never do. I moved to this bustling metropolis 3 years ago, seeking the anonymity of a big hospital, only to find that the stakes here are much higher than mere local scandals. The tension in the room was suffocating. The general signaled to his men to wheel the gurney toward the service elevator, bypassing the morgue entirely. "Wait!" I called out, my voice steadier than I felt. "Hospital policy requires a formal pronouncement by the attending physician on record." The general turned, his gaze narrowing into a lethal slit. "This is a matter of national security, Nurse Reed," he said, using my name despite me not wearing my badge. He knew who I was. The intrigue deepened when I noticed a faint tremor in the general's own hand, the hand that wasn't holding a weapon. He wasn't just cold. He was terrified. My mind raced through the rumors of Project Wraith, a Black Ops medical experiment involving neurological dampeners. If that soldier was who I thought he was, his death was a cover for a retrieval mission. I had to act, but every move I made was being watched by men trained to eliminate threats. I reached into my pocket and faked a stumble, brushing against the gurney and surreptitiously pressing a high-dose stimulant patch against the soldier's neck, hidden under his collar. It was a gamble that could land me in a federal prison, or a shallow grave. I watched as the gurney disappeared into the elevator, the general's eyes never leaving mine until the doors hissed shut. I stood there, my heart hammering against my ribs, knowing I had just lit a fuse on a bomb that was now traveling to the basement of my own hospital. Thank you for staying with me this far. It shows you feel the same intensity I felt when I lived through this. So please subscribe and hit the bell icon, because what comes next changes everything. The next hour was a blur of calculated risks. I knew the service elevator led to the loading docks, not the morgue. I bypassed the main stairs and took the maintenance ladder down to the sub-basement, a place filled with the hum of industrial boilers and the smell of damp concrete. My life in the city had been solitary, spent mostly in my small apartment overlooking the train tracks. But in this moment, the loneliness felt like a shield. No one would miss me if I disappeared for a few hours. As I reached the bottom, I saw the military transport idling near the exit. The guards were distracted, loading crates that looked suspiciously like medical equipment. I crept closer, hiding behind a stack of oxygen canisters. I could hear the general speaking into a secure radio. The asset is secured. Minimal exposure at the ER, proceeding to the extraction point. My stomach churned. The asset was a human being, a boy who looked no older than 20. I saw the gurney again, but this time, the soldier's hand was twitching. The stimulant patch was working. He wasn't just a body anymore, he was a witness. Just as I prepared to retreat and call the authorities, if there were any I could trust, I felt a cold metal cylinder press against the back of my neck. "You have a very bad habit of being curious, Evelyn," a familiar voice whispered. It was Dr. Aris, my department head, the man who had mentored me since I arrived in the city. He wasn't there to help. He was wearing a military-grade earpiece. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. The hospital wasn't just a place of healing. For some, it was a laboratory for the unthinkable. Aris informed me that the ghost signal wasn't just a sensor. It was a kill switch. If the soldier woke up outside of a controlled environment, the dot would turn black, releasing a toxin into his bloodstream. I had tried to save him, but I might have just triggered his execution. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this story from? Write it in the comments. It's amazing to see people from so many places following stories like this. The final confrontation happened in the shadows of the loading dock, under the orange glow of the security lights. Dr. Aris forced me toward the general, who looked at me with a mix of pity and annoyance. "She found the mark, sir," Aris reported, his voice devoid of the warmth I had known for years. The general walked over to the soldier, who was now gasping for air, his eyes rolling back in his head. The crimson dot on his arm was indeed darkening, turning a bruised, necrotic purple. "You've killed him, nurse," the general said coldly. "And now, we have to decide what to do with you." But as he reached for his sidearm, the soldier's hand shot up, grabbing the general's throat with superhuman strength. The stimulant hadn't just woken him. It had accelerated the very process the military was trying to control. In the ensuing chaos, the soldier whispered a single string of numbers to me, a coordinate and a date. It was a message for someone on the outside, a final act of defiance. The guards scrambled to sedate him, and in the confusion, I managed to slip away into the labyrinth of the hospital's basement. I spent the next 3 days hiding in plain sight, finishing my shifts while looking over my shoulder, waiting for the accident that would surely come for me. Eventually, the military presence vanished as quickly as it had arrived. No records of the soldier, the general, or the incident remained. Even Dr. Aris acted as if nothing had happened, though his eyes followed me with a predatory gleam. I still have the coordinate written on a piece of paper tucked into my shoe. I live in a state of constant vigilance, knowing that the ghost signal is still out there, and that I am the only one who knows the truth about the boys who die in the ER only to disappear into the night. I want to know your opinion. Have you ever experienced something or seen something so strange that you were forced to stay silent to protect yourself? Please leave your comment below. Subscribe to the channel for more incredible real-life accounts, and make sure to watch our next recommended video on the screen. See you in the next story.